Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Carrie Oderman with UATV. Ukraine's national bank has increased its foreign exchange reserves by 33% over the past week. It has purchased almost $80 million. In July, Ukraine's foreign exchange reserve grew by $1.2 billion. To discuss the economic potential for Ukraine in the near future, we welcome to our studio today Dmytro Boyarchuk, Executive Director at CASE Ukraine. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
You deal with terms like this every day. Could you maybe give me and our viewers a crash course in what foreign reserves are for and what it means?
These are like a stock of foreign currency that a country needs to keep because, for instance, if foreigners want to make business in Ukraine, for sure they are happy to make business in national currency, in hryvnia, but they want to make profits in easily tradable currencies, international currencies like US dollars, euros, etc., etc. They probably would not be happy to have to withdraw their profits in national currencies, and that's why every country needs to keep their gross international reserves. It's like an indication of capacities of the country to trade, to make business, because usually those gross reserves are accumulated from exports, from inflow of investments, etc. But in our case, to maintain our capacity to service for instance, our debts, we have to deal with the IMF. It also looks like okay, fine, but usually when investors are looking at any country, they are trying to not only to have a look at the gross reserves, but also at the net international reserves, which usually consists of their net of liabilities, for instance, to such international organization like IMF.
Okay, and you mean, of course, the International Monetary Fund. How closely do you work with the International Monetary Fund? Is there a type of reporting that happens?
We have, for the moment, we have a pause in our, relations with International Monetary Fund. Ukraine have completed, I would say, successfully our liabilities on current ongoing program. We were happy, for instance, to have gas prices falling down. And one of the key requirements for us was to meet, to increase gas prices for households to the level of 80% of market level. But because gas prices at the global market, they dropped substantially, we implemented this requirement actually without doing nothing. So we have, for instance, for household, for some months we had tariffs a bit higher than gas prices at the natural gas prices at the global market. So in this case we were lucky, but formally we have implemented this requirement. And general expectation is that we will get new wire from the IMF as soon as the new cabinet is appointed. For sure, there will be a period of negotiation. We will have a new program for sure with the new cabinet, but I think there will be an advance payment, like in a recognition that we are moving in right direction.
Now, you mentioned that Ukraine got lucky maybe with gas prices, but for anyone that's earning in hryvnias, we recognize that the hryvnia is gaining in strength. Yeah. What's triggering this? Inflation's going down?
For some reason, foreign investors in our debts, actually, they became increasingly optimistic about new president and new political force. Which actually we have one major political force for now. And they decided that it's a good time to buy Ukrainian debt in hryvnia. That's the main reason why we have hryvnia strengthening. We have incredible inflow of foreign currency related to this purchase. It's good to some extent, but in essence, we should recognize that these investments will not translate into exports. They will not translate into new jobs and in economic growth. They are actually it's speculative inflow of foreign currency, and everyone understands that it's very short, hot money.
Because of the fast turnaround, can you attribute this the stability of the hryvnia now to the new administration? Can they take credit for it?
My personal view that current stability of hryvnia is quite temporal, because you cannot believe in long-term strength of national currency if, for instance, we have stagnation of industry. For 7 months, we have only 3 months in the black. We have very high volatility, but over the last 2 months, industry is falling. And it's very strange because in general, prices for metals, which are the main commodity we export, they are more or less good. Actually, I think it's a consequence of trade war that we have globally, let's say. It affects such small open economy as Ukraine is. We are growing, we have good metrics on macro, mainly due to our employees abroad. Remittances, they generate a strong inflow of foreign currency to Ukraine, and due to exports of food products. It's not bad, it's better than nothing, but it's not strong ground to believe in long-term growth. So we have for the moment quite good metrics, but I don't think that they are not something we should expect. It will secure our midterm growth for the near future.
Let's circle back around to what you said about the trade war. You're talking about the United States and China, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
So Ukrainian metals have then picked up an export because the U.S. market is buying what Ukraine has to offer?
No, it's because the tendency of contracting global trade, and usually the first victims in such tendency are small economies which are not able to leverage any influence in this situation. And I think that the main reason why we have stagnation of our industries, while situation on prices is not that bad.
Now, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that these gains are short-term, and external investors are finding the market right now attractive in Ukraine. But would you warn them to be careful with their investments then?
I would say a lot will depend on the first moves of new cabinet. I think if new parliament, for instance, will establish finally agri-market, will cancel moratorium for agro-land sales, I think it will be a strong signal. It will push up our growth, and it will attract a lot of attention from more serious investors, I would say, investors who would be willing to invest in production in Ukraine.
Is that in Ukraine's best interest, though? Because once the market becomes more attractive and opens up, foreign investors could come in. There's lots of interest in China, in Ukrainian agriculture. Does the Ukraine want to give a large section of their agriculture development in foreign hands?
I would say that establishment of that market is not only will not be a signal not only for investors in agro production, but also for other investors, different investors, because Ukraine is undervalued. Our capacities, our economic potential is much higher than we are. And for many investors, Ukraine is associated with corruption, with poor protection of property rights, and we look on many maps like a backward country. So we have new presidents, and many observers are looking very interested in our potential, and they need more signals of irreversibility of our changes. If we have this moratorium finally cancelled, many years, more than 10 years we have this moratorium, it will be a signal that we are changing, that we are moving. If, for instance, we have new chief prosecutor, a clean person with good reputation, it will be a strong signal. And many other things. So I think for the moment, yes, our situation is, our growth is not very, stable. Any change on the global market, and we will be among the first victims of potential crisis, which is widely discussed. But to make this growth more reliable, more sustainable, I think there are several critical moves, and land market, I would say among the first, which are needed, and everything is possible.
Everything is possible. I think that's a great way to summarize this discussion about the Ukrainian economy. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. That was Dmytro Boyarchuk, Executive Director at Case Ukraine. Thanks for watching UATV, and stay tuned for more.